I try to the best of my ability in my work as a local member to understand the social problems of Australia.
Right, well,
I know that, for example, the gap between rich and poor over the last 13 years has widened.
That's not true.
And I know the dimension of the youth unemployment problem in areas
They're
like
sounding a bit like
Campbelltown.
campaign speeches. So let me just ask you about, clearly you both want to be Prime Minister, but it's an issue of leadership, and we'd like to know a few personal ideas on this. Tim Fisher was on the Sunday programme this morning, was asked about abortion. I've never heard your opinion on abortion. Are you
Well,
pro-life?
I am against abortion on demand. And I've
What about
always...
you, Paul?
Well, there's always been a non-party vote, and I myself have the same reservations about abortion on demand.
As John Howard.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're against it.
But can I emphasise, like Paul, that it is also a conscience issue.
Should Medicare pay for a woman's abortion?
Well, we don't have any plans to change that.
Paul?
Well, it's a matter of whether or not anyone that elects to have one has a proper clinical procedure or is pushed into some backyard operation. I think that's the issue, and that's why it's paid for.
So that,
There's really no difference.
That won't change.
But Ray, could I?
No. Won't change.
But could I just say, just coming back to the last question about understanding people, I understand them, but I've also done things. The family allowance supplement, supplementary payments for low-paid women, the maternity allowance, the home child care allowance, the parenting allowance, all in, all working, the generalised child care rebate, a fee relief in childcare. I mean, I just don't empathise with people. I've done something about it.
Okay, well, you've been in government for 13 years. Someone expects you should have done something about it. Let me just come back to
family allowance was introduced by the Liberal government.
Well, other people have
Let's
been in
just change the
government, they
pace a
didn't
little
do things
bit, Paul.
about it.
Condoms in school? Are you in favour of condoms in school, in high schools?
Well, it's a social issue. I think.
Yes.
Basically, I think it's important that children are not infected with this killer disease. But I don't believe that the whole climate of promiscuity, the whole breach of trust between people is something that ought to be encouraged.
So yes, condoms in school or not?
Well, I'd say no.
I'd say no.
I share his concern.
I'd say no,
Definitely
but
no.
I think that we should be seeking to educate young people about their life.
John Howard, are you relaxed and comfortable about homosexual marriages in Australia?
No, I'm not.
So you'd agree with John?
I don't believe that homosexuals should be discriminated against. I believe that sexual preference is a private matter, but I do not believe that homosexual relationships should be given the same legal status as a marriage. I believe marriage has a special role in our society. It is a special institution which gives an enormous amount of stability to our community. And
so a gay couple in marriage is not a family unit in Australia?
Well, I didn't say that. I mean, look, I'm not going to get into a legalistic definition. I mean, a family is an emotional relationship, and it's a commitment of people.
But like Tim Fisher, you're not in favour of
But I do not,
marriage.
I make no bones about it, I'm not in favour of homosexual marriages.
Well, I mean, people live in all sorts of relationships, Ray. You can't describe a family in any one way. The nuclear family is an important, but nevertheless somewhat
Can you ever be convinced
aging,
that two men and a
concept.
Cocker Spaniel is not a family unit, as you once said in Cabinet?
Well, you will never build a society on it. You will not build a nation on it. But it's another thing to discriminate against people. It's another thing to seek to do, as the National Party and others have done, is speak in discriminatory terms about people that live in homosexual
You really are trying to have
relationships.
two bob each way. I mean, just state your view and get on to the next one.
Excuse me, I can give my own answers, thanks. I don't need you to reinterpret them, John.
I heard the boss of ACOS on radio today saying that looking at the campaign, he said there's been so much about economic policy. $100 million of this and $1 billion thrown at that around the place. But you two haven't spoken about quality of life, the very thing that worries Australians who feel victims of change, who there's been nothing about sex and violence on film, although you spoke in the past. You've said nothing about the youth suicides and country towns disappearing.
Well, I have, Ray. We announced a program on... No, could I just say, we announced a program on youth suicide last Tuesday in Queensland, and it included a number of items. We expressed a great deal of concern, and I accept it goes across the parties. I mean, it is a huge social problem. This country has one of the largest youth suicide rates in the Western world.
Is it a priority though, John? I guess, but
well, it is.
Is it a priority?
Well, we have a special program, $18 million over 3 years, to deal with the counselling part of it. We're going to try and get the major media organisations together to get a voluntary code about youth suicide. One of the things that worries us is that some of the media reporting can encourage cat suicides. We are very concerned about that. We're not going to make anything mandatory because we believe in free speech, but I would imagine that most of the major media organisations in this country would be willing to come together to try and do something to
Ray, could I just
address
add this
the problem.
point? I actually made an initiative on this. I object to violence in film. I object to violence on television.
But you haven't mentioned the campaign. Recently hasn't been reported.
No, but I had to fight the networks, including this network, to change the ratings, to stop putting that violent rubbish on television at times when children were watching it.
You've been in power
and to push it back.
You've been in power for 13 years. I mean, women and old people in Australia don't feel safe in their homes today, let alone in the streets. Well, that hasn't been raised.
I think the whole culture of violence is a problem for us.
But that's mum and apple pie stuff. What's the answer?
No. Well, we have made decisions to move against the dissemination of violent material
What about national gun laws?
Our society.
Are you in favour of national gun law?
Well, we've already made decisions that prohibit the importation of certain categories.
We don't have a national
weapons.
gun law, so policemen don't know if someone crosses it.
We have a national gun law, Ray. You may not know about it. We've stopped the importation of of repeating weapons, and we did it about 3 or 4 years ago, and we had to fight the gun lobby to do it. It's already been done.
Are you in favour of national gun laws and a national gun register?
Well, I'm in favour of very strict controls on the.
That's mum and apple pie again, John.
No,
at the end of the day, policemen and criminologists say...
With respect, I don't, because I think it is, because there are certain constitutional rights and powers in this area that reside with the states, and you
the
can't...
federal government has the power to have a national gun register and a national gun register.
Yeah,
how about that?
I'm in favour of a set of laws that you work out in cooperation with the states that gives the maximum amount of protection.
This is sort of passing the buck. I mean, you have the power. The federal government has the power to do this.
It is not passing the buck.
You're not afraid of the gun lobby?
No, I'm not. Certainly not.
What about handguns? Are you against handguns?
What do you mean against?
The use of handguns.
I can't see any justification at all for people carrying handguns, and I'd hate to see the cities of Australia become anything like New York.
Are you against handguns?
Yes, I am, Ray, and you can't buy a handgun over the counter, but the really dangerous things are these repeating weapons, and we have already outlawed important categories, that is, destructive categories of these weapons.
Do you see, as two fathers, two family men, the fact that when Australians see magistrates go to jail and politicians go to jail and policemen go to jail and the top businessmen go to jail, where are the role models we have in Australia? Does that disturb you?
Can I just say in our politics, I've been in the House of Representatives 27 years. I don't know on either side of Parliament anyone I would regard or describe as a corrupt person.
No, but state governments have seen this.
In either party, I believe that we've got, certainly at the national level, very clean politics in this country. I think there is very much a role model there, and I think we have mechanisms to see that these things happen. There's the Royal Commission in New South Wales as a case in point. If there are problems here, we deal with it, but we don't accept it and we don't turn our head.
You were going to say?
Well, I agree with him. I think federally this has been a remarkably clean show. You can't say the same about state politics and local government. And the other thing, by and large, that has been free from corruption in this country is the judiciary. You've had some isolated cases.
In Queensland, New South Wales?
Yeah, but by and large...
What about how about a code of conduct in Parliament?
Well, look, I'm no great believer in those things. You can't legislate. If there's no instinct for honest behaviour, you can't legislate. I mean, the Americans have the most strict code imaginable about fundraising and all those other things. It didn't stop Richard Nixon and Watergate. It didn't stop Spiro Agnew actually taking money when he was Vice President of the United States. I think it's a question of having a decent...
What about conduct in what you've referred to in the past as the rough and tumble of the federal parliament? Yeah. Australian families and parents see as verbal thuggery. They see you behaviour in parliament as what they wouldn't approve of in their own families.
But what's happening is that their wages are being defended, Medicare is being defended.
But do we need to shout and scream at each other all the time?
What needs to happen is that views that are strongly held and policies that are entirely necessary for the welfare of the Australian community. I mean,
Paul, in your family, you would not let your children act the way you two act in Parliament.
Look, Ray, you've got a healthy parliamentary democracy, which is the clearinghouse of national pressures. If people want people like myself or John Howard to represent a respective point of view, in my case, for good wages, for a decent social safety net, these are things worth fighting for.
You've both just agreed about the last 5 minutes. You've agreed on a whole range of things. Why don't we ever see both sides of Parliament pulling together for 18 million Australians?
I think for a lot of time it does happen.
But I mean,
well, you know, well, that's not our choice. That's the choice that news editors make every night when they put their bulletins together.
Well, when was the last time we worked with this bloke on something? In fact, to try and get something for the better of the Australian people.
Well, I often support decent government legislation, but I often put up things that I can't support, and I mean, and I think it's part of the democratic process for me to point out the deficiencies. I mean, and you asked me about Parliament. I mean, I'll make 2 changes to Parliament. I'll turn up to work every day if I become Prime Minister. I won't have any roster days off like this bloke's had over the last...
I turn up to work.
The second thing that I'll do is I'll have an independent Speaker. And the great weakness in Parliament over the last few years is that we have not had an effectively independent Speaker. You've had a Speaker who has not been truly independent of the Labor Party, and if I become Prime Minister, I'll adopt a system of having a completely independent Speaker who can be just as tough on me and my ministers if I get out of line as you.
That's a cheap shot.
It's not a cheap shot, it's
every
true.
day. The Prime Minister, the head of a government in this country, works day and night. Whether one goes into the Parliament chamber, the government, the executive government, works day and night. I've never missed a day's work, and often not a night's work, since I've been Prime Minister. But I also believe that spending 1 hour every day in Parliament answering rhetorical questions from an opposition that has no policy framework is not serving the Australian public well. Not serving the Australian public well. When the serious business of the government, which moves along every hour of every day, needs to be attended to.
All right, well, let's go to some of that serious business.
So
last time
I go in there the same time, more time in fact, than the British Prime Minister and most other Prime Ministers in the Westminster.
The British Parliament sits twice as often.
Last time we spoke 2 weeks ago, in fact, you pulled a rabbit out of the hat. You talked about $800 million in tax cheats. We haven't heard another thing about that. That's been dropped like a dead dog.
No, because Ray, it'll happen.
It wasn't a stunt?
It's going to be a policy change, and it was costed by the Treasury and the Department of Finance. That's why I said earlier, the Labor Party is in there. The Labor Party is in there with its funding over twice its commitments, and those commitments are half those of Mr. Howard and his party.
Is there legislation though coming?
Oh, of course there will be.
Why did you give 3 months' notice then to those tax cheats?
Because we were only notified by the tax office that they had found the size of this in December of last year, and more fully in January of this year, and we acted on it immediately. By contrast, when Mr. Howard was told about his problems in the tax system, the criminal evasion of the tax system, in the late 1970s, early 1980s, it took him 3 years to move on the bottom of the harvest schemes. On the bottom of the harvest schemes.
It's like Elliot Ness warning Al Capone he's going to raid a speakeasy. I mean, you've given them the greatest warning under the sun, and they'll take the money out of one scheme and they'll put it...
John Howard, you've said to us tonight that, in fact, we can't trust this bloke when it comes to economics.
No, you can't trust him when it comes to election promises, because he's got form, he's got LAW law, he's got tax off pensioners...
But for the last 12 months since you took over as leadership of the Liberal Party, you've warned us about 5 minutes of economic sunshine. You've told us about that. Storm clouds coming, and so what's happened? That seems to have gone now because you've based some of your policies on his budget estimates.
No, what I've said, Ray, is that what the Australian community has felt over the last 12 months is as if there has only been 5 minutes of economic sunshine, and I stand by that statement.
But you take his word in terms of budget because you've based your policies on it.
No, what has happened is that we went through this very, very deep recession, the worst in 60 years, the one that we had to have, the one for which you've never apologised, the one that put 1 million Australians out of work. Well, I mean, I know you don't like it.
You had a much deeper recession in 1981, far deeper.
The Australian people ought to be reminded of it, and you can't, with weasel words, evade your responsibility for it, and they go through all the pain of that recession. Things start looking as though they're picking up, and bang, and interest rates go up again, bang, and you've still got... You've still got 8.6% of people out of work.
Hang on, John.
Right, we are now into 17 consecutive quarters of economic growth, the longest growth phase in Australian history. And for John Howard to be cynically manipulating public opinion with a mischievous line about 5 minutes of sunshine is to sell the whole country down the drain. The longest growth phase in Australian history, which has produced, in the last 3 years, an average rate of growth twice as fast as any other Western country and the fastest rate of employment growth in the Western world.
And foreign debt from 20 million to 188 million. How do I tell my children that they're going to have to pay for that?
And the servicing capacity from 21% of our exports down to 11.
Will we pay that off?
Down to 11.
Will we ever pay that foreign debt?
We haven't got a plan to do anything about it.
Our capacity to service our debt has doubled, and we're at the same time
keeps going up.
Yes, but so do our assets. We've got nearly 90 billion of private assets offshore.
So you're comfortable with $188 billion in foreign debt?
Well, but against that, there's 90 billion of private assets offshore, and all of that's been borrowed on the current account to put it there. But I'll just say this about the recession. The deepest recession since the war was when John Howard was Treasurer between 1980 and 1982. So let's stop all this stuff about recessions and apologies. The fact is, Ray, that this is the longest period of growth, and what I'm saying to people is it can continue right through the 1990s. If we keep the wage system right, if we don't collapse the accord, if we don't beat up unions, if we keep our eye on the inflation rate and we keep investment coming, we can have strong growth and strong employment right through to the turn of the century.
Do you feel that you've set up a good economy and this place going to ride to glory on,
exactly.
on your back?
I mean,
is that what you feel?
What's happened? Well, I took an industrial graveyard off John Howard. An industrial graveyard with double-digit unemployment, double-digit inflation, and basically our industry's going nowhere. Now we're exporting our heads off. We're a modern, sophisticated economy. We've got a highly trained workforce. We've got even more training coming into the workforce, and we've got a good wages system in place to keep high productivity and low inflation.
The great problem with that, Paul, is people don't believe it.
Well, it's right.
They don't believe it. And that's the equivalent of you saying, what are they going on about? They're going on about the fact that we still have 780,000 people out of work. We have almost 30% youth unemployment. We've got a foreign debt of 180 billion. What do you say? Oh, it's perfectly all right. I mean, I'm doing it.
We're servicing it. We're exporting our heads off.
You've never apologised. You've never shown any remorse for the pain.
We're down to the last few minutes on this one. Is your vision of Australia, as you said on Four Corners, is it really comfortable and relaxed Australia? You're going to put us to sleep?
Well, that was just part of it.
I heard the lot.
No.
Comfortably forward now in the future.
No, I want an Australian future, an Australian society where you give incentive and hope to individuals.
But is that the best you could do, though? Comfortable and relaxed?
Well, there were a lot of other things I said, but that's what appeared. That you give incentive and hope to individuals, where you strengthen and you don't damage the role of the family in the community. I mean, I want an Australian society where you care for those who can't look after themselves, and I want an Australian society that draws on the great diversity of our population. I mean, we are I know it's an old cliche, we are a very lucky country, but we could be doing it a lot better.
Again, with respect, it sounds like motherhood. If you're concerned about those who can't look after themselves, you've been conspicuous with your silence on Aboriginal health. $1 billion a year is spent on this. In the last 12 months, when have you talked about it?
We have talked about that. I have in fact expressed the anger and the amazement.
Well, we're all angry and amazed, but what are you going to do about it?
Well, I tell you what, the amount of money that has been spent in that area, it is an indictment of this man's government that the state of Aboriginal health, despite the expenditure of hundreds of millions of dollars, is so bad.
But what will you do about it? Because it was no better when you were in government.
I will make certain, Ray, that the money gets to the problem, because clearly that isn't happening at the present time. Like, everybody in this country, irrespective of their politics, wants genuine reconciliation between the Aborigines of this country and the rest of the Australian community. But the way you get genuine reconciliation is not through politically correct symbols. You get it through focusing on areas of deprivation, through making certain that the very large amounts of money that are made available do get to the problem. And that hasn't happened because in many of the areas where you measure Aboriginal health, it has in fact got worse.
Well, let me say this.
It has got worse under your leadership.
Aboriginal empowerment essentially comes with land. When the Native Title Act was passed, John Howard's party said it was a day of shame. They did everything to defeat it in the Senate. John Howard talks about Aboriginal reconciliation. His party and he was a front bencher when Dr. Hewson was the leader, did everything to stop it. There has been a real change, I think, in Australia.
Not in Aboriginal health.
Well, there's been a real change in terms of a real basis of reconciliation after Mabo. People feel better about it. They know a good thing has been done. And when Aboriginal
that's
people
warm
have their
and fuzzy
land,
again,
no,
Paul.
no, it wasn't warm and fuzzy.
How about 25 times the wide rate of diabetes and infant death and blindness and rheumatoid?
Well, I agree with you, but
what's happened to that?
I was at Hopevale with you looking at that very problem. But you've
it's
got
still there.
Exactly, but you've got to start with the land, and you've got to get people out of what were formerly mission stations, which are now called Aboriginal community centres, and we've got to get them back out onto the land. And at the same time, we've got to deal with the environmental problems like housing, overcrowded housing, inadequate sewerage, bad roads, bad water, which has been a problem which has largely been left with the states and left undone, and that's why the Commonwealth is now engaged in health directly.
All right, they've been told that for the last 30 years.
We've now passed Mabo, and you've now got the Commonwealth Department of Health directly delivering health programs on the ground.
We're down to the last few minutes, but John, I'd like to ask you, this campaign we've had for the last 4 weeks, did you feel like a goose when you were sitting in that sandbox with a 4-year-old boy trying to pour him tea?
No.
Why were you there?
Well, I think part of any campaign are things like that. I mean, in any election campaign you do things. I don't think there's. I never feel. Can I tell you right? I never feel a goose with young children. I love children. I loved it when my own children.
But do you need to actually get there and pour him a little bit of water just for that point?
I find that a perfectly natural thing to do. I think
for a photograph.
I think any man who has a difficulty in playing with a young child, I feel sorry for them. I think playing with children, spending time with children is a wonderful, natural thing to do, and I always enjoy doing it. So far from feeling a goose, I enjoy children. They captivate me and I love them.
Well, we all love them. Well, they all captivate us. But what about, do you really believe at some stage, Paul, that there's going to be an international airport at Dubbo, that they're going to be 747s flying in and out of there?
It's a distinct possibility. If the study finds positively, I think it's about a $20 to $30 million capital commitment, and it would see horticultural industries, fruit and vegetables, perishables, able to be taken out of Australia. But again, it has to be economic, and the government said it will fund a study.
So you weren't just out there simply for the vote saying, well, look, this is what we'll look at, and once the election's over,
I was at Orange last year talking to the Agri-Food Council about the very same subject, to Woolworths, to some of the big producers and to some of the big distributors.
To sum up, but a quick question, a news question. Were you shocked by the federal court's ruling on Friday about the behaviour of Rupert Murdoch's companies in Australia over football?
These are corporate matters under the Trade Practices Act, Ray. I mean, you'd have to know
But the judge's use of words like deceit and dishonesty and duplicity and corrupting tactics, does that come into...
Yeah, but why ask us, Ray?
Because Telstra is in partnership with Fox in terms of pay television. Yes, but you're also going to give them the Fox studios.
What are you trying to say now? I manage the rugby league. Is that it?
No, you're in partnership with a company that has been severely criticised
for a paid television business, but Super League is a creature of the News Corporation and News Limited.
So it's nothing about TV licences or about newspapers in Australia. There's no reflection on that.
I mean, look, this is essentially about corporations. It's a corporation tussle.
Any alarm bells for you on this?
Well, could I just say something about it? As a lover of rugby league, I hope that court decision is a catalyst to reunite the game. I think the division and the bitterness, the rancour that has occurred and has cut in half a great game, and I'd like to see...
But any alarm bells? We don't have your communications policy, but any alarm bells about a company involved in newspapers and television in Australia that gets that sort of critique?
Oh, well, I mean, they are entitled to the further procedures of the law like anybody else, and I don't think somebody in my position should be making ex cathedra judgments.
All right, we'll now give you 90 seconds each to wrap up tonight. You were both expected to land a knockout punch tonight. Give us your knockout. Why should Australians vote for you?
Because I can do a better job. I mean, I've stayed in politics. I've suffered my share of adversity. I've stayed in politics because I care about this country. In common, I'm sure, with so many, I love this country. I care about its future. I know it's got problems, but I believe that if I'm given the chance, I can do something to fix those problems. I've tried in this election campaign to address the real issues. I've developed a plan for youth unemployment. I will actually do something about it. I will get small business going again. I will expand the apprenticeship system. I will ensure that there is some hope offered to those 40 to 50% of young Australians in areas like Campbelltown that are without a job. I've got an affordable tax package, 1/4 of the tax package that he offered before the last election, fully funded, paid for to the last dollar, that point not even disputed by Kim Beazley. It's targeted to low-income earners. In other words, I'm addressing the fundamental problems. I've stayed in politics because I want to see Australia a better country. I want to see that we care for the people in our community who need help.
Okay,
and I also want to build on the fact that we can use our history as well as our geography. We can exploit our European and American associations to ensure that we have a real place in this part of the world to the benefit of all Australians.
Had you 90 seconds, 90 seconds.
Ray, this is the period of the greatest opportunity for Australia, fantastic opportunity. 18 million people, the only nation on earth with a continent to itself, in the fastest growing part of the world, now a cohesive country where we've got a decent social wage, we've got universal access to health insurance, access and equity in education, support for a strong social wage, a decent wage system, low inflation, high productivity, high training, nearly 8 in 10 young people completing secondary school, a doubling of university places. All that gives us the opportunity of being a trained, technically sophisticated country, growing rapidly on the threshold of Asia, making the linkages. I don't think we've never before been part of the fastest growing markets of the world. We are now. Australia in part has set up the primary piece of political architecture in the Asia Pacific with APEC. We've made the opportunities, we've made the bilateral links to these countries, and what we're going to do is improve the capacity of Australians to find jobs, for the country to grow stronger, for incomes to be greater, and for jobs to be more interesting. I think that's part of the future that I see, and I've been working towards that now as a Minister and Prime Minister, opening Australia up, making it bountiful, making it confident, letting it go out to the world, letting it embrace the world, and in that way giving Australians a higher standard of living, something I think we could have only dreamt of a decade or so ago.
All right, in the last couple of seconds, will you stay in politics? Will you stay in Parliament if you lose?
I'd have to think about that, Ray.
You haven't made your... What about you, John? Will you stay in politics?
Well, I won't be opposition leader. I certainly
would you
won't.
stay in politics?
Well, I'd have to think about that too, but I certainly wouldn't be resigning straight away, and I'll turn up when Parliament sits. I expect to be there as Prime Minister.
So do I. Just by the way, John, so do I.
All right.
Well, we'll agree.
We agreed on that. That's a nice way to finish. Thank you, John Howard. Thank you, Paul Keating. Thank you for being with us tonight for this great debate. Good luck next Saturday. Thank you and good night. Good night.
Hotel.